start letting people in. Hello, we're all here. We're staff are all here. We're just going to wait a couple of minutes and give people a little bit more time to trickle in before we jump off and launch into things. But welcome and thanks for coming. We're glad to have you here. And just so you know, we'll have periods throughout the presentation where we'll pause and we'll answer some questions from the chat, but for the bulk of the session, we're going to have people's mics muted. And so just in case you're wondering, like, what happened? It'll make it possible for us to kind of organize. We're supposed to have a really large turnout for today's session. And so that will kind of probably make it just flow a little bit better for everybody. Welcome. If you just come in, I was letting everybody else know that we're going to wait just a few more minutes before we launch in. We have pretty high registration for this session, and so we'll give people a couple more minutes. We'll launch into things at 10:35, but welcome. And we're going to ask everybody to put their questions into the chat today, and then periodically throughout the presentation, we'll pause and answer some questions from the chat. And anything that doesn't get covered today, if your question was in the chat or you have a question afterwards, you can email them to procurement, and we will make sure that they all get answered and posted online so that everybody can share in the response. Oops. Sorry. We'll give it one more minute here. We had quite a few people register for this, and people are quickly filtering in. So we'll give it one more minute and then we'll launch right in. Throughout the presentation, if you have any questions, put them in the chat, please. And we will stop periodically throughout the meeting today to answer some questions as we can. And then any follow-up questions that we don't get to, or any questions you have in the chat that we don't get to, we will make sure that those get answered And you can also email follow-up questions to the procurement email that's provided in the RFA and in the fact sheet. And we will make sure that all those responses get posted so everybody can share in them. All right. Well, 10:35, welcome. My name is Kimie Weoka. I am in the Affordable Rental Housing Division. I'm the capacity building analyst for affordable rental housing. I manage a program called the GHAP Capacity Building Program, and the GHAP Capacity Building Funds are the source of this particular grant, and I'll get into that in a little bit here. But I wanted to give the other OHCS team members who are on the call a moment to introduce themselves. The three of us are kind of your key contacts throughout this process with the ARH partnership grant. So Deandra, if you wouldn't mind going next.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Deandra Llewellyn. I am the procurement specialist. I'm working on this grant offering with Kimie, and I am your point of contact for this offering and with OHCS. Welcome. I'm so happy that you guys were all able to make it and join us this morning.
And Micah, would you go next?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I'm the support specialist for the Planning and Policy Department here at OHCS. Happy to help out and assist with this meeting. And if you have any questions, just a reminder, if everyone could put them in the chat, and we will do our best to make sure that they get addressed.
Great, thank you. Okay, so today's presentation, we're going to be talking about I'll give you a little background for the GHAP Capacity Building Funds. Then we'll dive right into this grant, a little bit about the purpose of this grant, the application process, some of the components, the award and agreement process, and some next steps. Let's see. So a little bit about the GHAP Capacity Building Program, and GHAP stands for General Housing Account Program. So it's funny, GHAP Capacity Building Program. The GHAP funds were created and set aside, I think, starting back in 2009, and were a really small kind of presence within the Affordable Rental Housing Division. But the guidance around the intended purpose for the GHAP Capacity Building Funds is pretty wonderfully broad. It says for expanding or building affordable housing development capacity by enhancing the capacity of organizations, our partner organizations, to develop and operate multifamily affordable rental housing. And to this program, the way that we are interpreting capacity building is any resources, activities, or support needed to bring an organization to the next level of operational, programmatic, organizational development to advance their mission related to development and management of affordable housing. So that's really broadly, these funds are broadly dedicated to that purpose. The capacity building program in the past 12 years has granted out or funded training and technical assistance. More than 4.7 million has gone out for those purposes. There have been more than 100 grants and training opportunities offered through these funds or funded by these funds. And the funds themselves are regularly replenished by the county document recording fees, which is unique and really a great situation for us because we're not tied to the biennium. We're not having to go back and request them again. They are automatically replenished through the document recording fees, which are coming in regularly. There's, I'll go back for a second. There is more information about the capacity building program on the OHCS grants and tax credits webpage. The slides for this presentation will be available online later, the recording, and a lot of these links are also available inside the RFA and also the fact sheet attached to this offering. So this specific offering is not intended for the larger capacity building organizational purpose. This specific offering is a smaller offering from the capacity building funds specific to supporting our key partners in providing resident services to affordable rental housing properties and projects. This need came up through internal and external conversations that we had with both our developer organizations and also community-based organizations who we partner with in order to support residents of OHCS funded properties. And a really clear need that came up over and over again is kind of an undercompensation for the role of our community-based partners in their work supporting residents, supporting projects that are doing affirmative fair housing marketing, supporting community engagement and interpretation and all these other cultural and placemaking components that create a community and a home around these developments and projects. And so OHCS decided to create this offering to supplement and to complement other sources of funding that are already available to community-based organizations in support of resident services activities. And that's basically what I just said. So some details of this grant are that applicants must be a nonprofit organization or a federally recognized Native American tribe in Oregon. You may request up to $25,000 to be spent down over 2 years. If you are awarded and you choose to spend it down more quickly, that's absolutely fine. But we do know with the development projects that the role of community-based organizations can span, be sporadic over the course of a couple of years. And so we wanted to make sure that we left enough time for that intent, that purpose, if that was what the applicant organization wanted to use the money towards. Grant activities must serve residents of income-restricted affordable rental housing. And that could be, a locally financed income-restricted affordable rental housing. It doesn't have to currently exist within OHCS's sole portfolio. It really just needs to be income-restricted affordable rental housing. And we are trying to limit the reporting, the bigger reporting requirements for this, because we do know that it's a relatively small amount of money, and we want to be make sure that you are using all of your capacity towards actually, doing the work you want to be doing and not writing a bunch of reports. So you only have to report at the year end, although of course, when you submit disbursement requests, you would be providing some detailing of what those costs or expenses went to, the activities that those were used for. Overall, the program has reserved $750,000 for this offering. So we're hoping we can fund a fair amount of activities through that amount. So resident services, we're interpreting it as broadly as we possibly can. It's to support development projects in community outreach or engagement, lease-up activities, listening sessions, community engagement, other placemaking activities, cultural and language accessibility, eviction prevention activities, not for direct rent assistance payments, unfortunately, with this offering, but other activities that and support that is provided around eviction prevention that would those would qualify. Any sort of educational knowledge sharing activities, workforce development, family support activities, you could kind of name it. We're trying our best to interpret this really broadly. Ooh. If you wouldn't mind making sure to Micah, can you pause or can you mute everyone? Oh my gosh, I'm really sorry. Okay, can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Okay, sorry. I think my like air traffic controller headphones were picking up. He while my husband is watching in the other room. I apologize. Okay, I'm gonna go on this way here. Okay. Other details that you need to know are that applicants you'll be asked to provide addresses for income restricted properties that you're planning to serve. So it doesn't mean that the activities have to necessarily be provided on site, but if you're going to be offering an activity through your organization and asking for reimbursement or funding through this grant, that you will need to do direct engagement and focus some of your marketing for that activity to income restricted properties. So on-site is awesome if you can provide it, but we can also interpret that with some flexibility as well. For this grant, we have created some additional qualifying criteria. So in addition to being a nonprofit organization, there are some criteria or characteristics for your organization, service community, and your organization itself that we would like awardees to meet. And so in a minute, I'll get a little bit more into the qualifying criteria, but just be aware that there is that piece as well. And this offering will be awarding priority points during the scoring process towards activities in applications that are in service of underrepresented communities, hard to reach communities, rural communities, and tribal members, as well as any activities that are in service of affordable rental housing development projects that are currently in or were recently in the 4% LIHTC pipeline. Okay, I think this is a good spot to pause for a moment. And Micah, if you wouldn't mind, if there are any questions in the chat, we could probably answer a couple of questions there.
Great. So the first question is from Jamie, and the question is, can the eviction prevention support be used for individual residents, or would it need to be a broader program?
Yeah, so It can absolutely be sort of, you could build towards this grant, any sort of case management activities that you were doing, or your staff's time doing those case management activities, as long as the resident that you're providing them to is a resident of an affordable rental housing property. Absolutely. Let's do another one, Micah.
Great. So the next question is from Riley, and Riley asks, can you please give some examples of spending that would fall under, quote, workforce development, end quote?
Sure. Just off the top of my head here, and I'm sure you probably could list off a number of activities as well. But say your organization, one of the services that you provide is training and assistance with interview skills, or writing a resume, or maybe even training around a specific professional skill, like coding, or it just depends on any sort of workforce training and technical assistance to help the residents of the property build a skill that might support them in their professional development or career path, would probably qualify. We could probably do one more, Micah.
So Diego asked, if there are 2 buildings in our portfolio, would we be able to apply for a grant for each building, or is there one grant per organization?
So it's one grant per organization, but you could serve multiple properties under that grant, but it is one application per organization.
And there's a follow-up question.
Okay.
To that question, does construction need to be completed already in order to receive grant?
No. So it is not tied to the development process per se. This is for the resident services that could manifest or take place at any point during that process. So it could be like a key community partner who helped convene and bring together community members from a specific neighborhood or a specific cultural group, and that, this is just an example, like, and help with thinking through design components, right? Or it could be a property that is fully leased up and has been in existence for years, and your community-based organization goes into that property, and in their community space, you regularly provide English lessons or some other service that the community has expressed that they want or need. It's not tied at all to the development and placed in service milestones. All right, I'm going to jump into the next section, and we will absolutely keep track of which questions we responded to, which ones we didn't get to, and we'll have another break in just a few more slides for some more questions. Great questions. Okay. Okay, so the 5 out of 8 qualifying criteria. I'm just going to read through these, but for the purposes of this grant, we have these additional qualifying criteria. The first one, and remember, your organization just needs to meet 5 out of the 8 to be eligible to receive these funds. 1, You primarily serve low and very low income individuals. Your organization could be a culturally specific organization. The organization is based in a rural community or primarily serves rural communities. The organization has the ability to effectively serve Black, Indigenous, or another community of color. The organization primarily serves a community that has been historically targeted by discriminatory housing policies in Oregon. The organization has affordable rental housing in their portfolio of properties, or they have a relationship established where they're providing ongoing resident services to an affordable rental housing property. The organization has fewer than 10 staff or has an annual budget of 1 million or less. Or the organization primarily serves a severely rent burdened community or a community that's at higher risk of eviction due to the COVID pandemic. And remember, you don't have to meet all 8. Your organization really just needs to meet 5 out of the 8 in order to qualify for this offering. Another kind of follow-up question or kind of a follow-up piece of information, and I have to go back to my notes here. For the purposes of this grant, when we say primarily serves, we mean that, you know, supporting a specific community or communities is at the core of your organization's mission, and that members of that community make up the majority of your client population. Your organization can have programs or events that are offered to the general public, but really the majority of your focus and your resources and your time are dedicated to serving, you know, one or more specific communities. Additionally, you know, when you think about the qualifying criteria, there are some existing resources online, HUD maps, things like that, data sources, but it will be your responsibility to just let us know how you meet each of these qualifying criteria and provide us a little bit of information about how you see yourself as meeting the qualifying criteria. So for example, effectively serves, so organization has the ability to effectively serve Black, Indigenous, or another community of color. You can tell us what that means to effectively serve Black community members. It's not just about numbers or defining success. It's really like, how is your organization defining success based on the experience and the insight and the knowledge that you have, having been of service to this community or of this community? What is your unique position and understanding into the needs of this community and what it means to effectively serve that community? So this is probably another good spot to stop for a few questions. Micah, will you grab another couple?
Yeah, we so far we just have one question. Is there a way to access slides later?
Oh, yes. This slide deck will be online. Deandra, does a component like this, like just the slide deck, does that get posted on procurement, or would that get posted on the GHAP capacity building page?
Anything related to this RFA would get posted on procurement as well.
Okay, great. So it'll be in 2 spots. It'll be first place, always number 1 place to look for things and updates is on procurement's opportunities page for this specific offering. But I will make sure to link all those things on procurement's page to also the GHAP capacity building webpage. Anything else, Micah?
Yeah, so Jamie asked if you could go back one slide.
Sure thing. And all of this information is in the RFA, also in the fact sheet. Yeah, just as an FYI for you too.
We have another question, Kimye.
Okay.
So Margaret asked, can you further explain, quote, community historically targeted by discriminatory practices in Oregon?
Sure. So a very kind of clear example would be the historic redlining policies that have happened in Oregon, discriminating against the Black community members as to where they could purchase homes. Because I'm Japanese, I'm very familiar with like historical discriminatory policies against Asian Americans, going back even further in history. It doesn't always have to be tied to race, although it oftentimes has been in the past. It could also be discriminatory housing policies that were in place before an ADA, before ADA requirements were even conceived of. So that will be kind of your responsibility to kind of let us know what have been the discriminatory practices and policies that have impacted housing to this day for your service community. All right. So there are some priority points attached to the scoring on this grant opportunity. Applications that are in service of historically underserved and hard to reach communities, affordable rental housing development projects, currently or recently in the LIHTC pipeline, Native nations or tribes, federally recognized tribes in Oregon, and rural communities will receive an additional points boost of 5% of the total will be added before a final categorization. If you're curious about how we identify rural communities within the RFA, there is a definition for this offering, as well as a link to some data and maps that OHCS provides and utilizes as we ourselves define rural communities more generally. So the major scoring components for this offering are under these 4 primary categories. And within the RFA, we've given a little bit of an example or a summary around what a 10-point score for that component area should include. So the major component areas are mission, representation, impact, and qualifications, alignment with the statewide housing plan priorities, scope of work, feasibility and readiness, and budget alignment with that scope of work and justification. And then the priority points would be added to the total. An example of the guidance that's in the RFA for what a 10-point response would include. Some examples are responses would indicate well-planned activities with a purpose. The organization is aware of housing barriers and provides good descriptions of those barriers for their service community, things like that. But there's a little bit of a description there underneath each of these scoring component areas within the RFA. So it's a really good idea to take a look at those and maybe kind of hold them against what you your responses as you fill out the application. Oh, another pause for questions. Micah?
Yeah, so we just have one, and it is, what is the cutoff for recently in the pipeline?
Oh, yes, it's 12 months. So if the 4% project has exited the LIHTC 4% pipeline within the last 12 months, it would, the application would then receive the priority points.
And we have another question, and Trell asked, a living wage is $55,000 to $65,000 a year in Oregon. If an organization is paying this wage to resident services coordinator, then $25,000 only supports about 1/3 of an FTE. Will OHCS be okay with such limited time / FTE additional capacity, or is the department expecting more?
No, that's a really good question. So these funds are intended to be supplementary. They are not designed nor intended to be fully funding resident services. And the reason for that is that, and this is my understanding, is that in most of the development financing opportunities for projects, there is an expectation and an ability to a degree, and I totally understand that this is an area that needs to be looked at more closely, but that projects that are applying for financing through OHCS should be able to write into their project budget resident services support. And I know that there are all kinds of challenges there that need to be addressed, but this particular offering is only designed to supplement and not fully fund full resident services as we know best practices would necessitate and would expect. And so because this is only intended to be a supplementary fund to projects, it is not carving out the full amount that would be needed to absolutely completely staff up a resident services position and provide those in a really robust way on its own. Micah, is there another one?
That's it for the questions right now.
Okay. So applications will be reviewed and scored by a review panel with experience and knowledge in affordable rental housing and resident services. The review panel recommendations will require final approval from the Affordable Rental Housing Division Director, and then awardees will be notified by procurement. Ooh, Deandra, do you want to talk a little bit about the insurance piece?
Yeah, so we'll go ahead and just kind of briefly talk about insurance requirements, just because this can be such a, I guess, a hot button item for some. And so I just want to reiterate that the RFA does have the insurance requirements in attachment C of the sample agreement. So you'll be able to find those. So we provide that to you ahead of time so that you can review that and understand exactly what those requirements are for this particular offering and what the state is going to require in order to execute an agreement. And also, we encourage you to really start working with your insurance providers or those folks to really start discussing what or how you're going to meet those requirements, because OHCS cannot execute an agreement until all insurance requirements are met. And so just to expedite that process, once we get to that agreement phase, we do ask that you submit all of your insurance requirements with a signed agreement so that we can move forward and process the agreement. However, there are times where that process can slow down a little bit because we are still waiting for insurance documents to come in. And so this is just a great reminder to really start looking at that and making sure that if you already do business with the state, then you're pretty familiar with what our requirements are. However, those additional requirements as it relates to this specific award and specific offering will be found in attachment C of the sample agreement. And please, if you have any questions, please, reach out to procurement, and you can email us at the procurement website that is found on the RFA.
Great, thank you, Deandra. Let's see, maybe you and I can kind of both chime in on this one. So state grants typically operate on a reimbursement model. An application selected for funding through this grant may opt for 25% of the award up front with regular disbursements afterward, or just jumping into a schedule of regular disbursement. And that usually is a monthly or quarterly disbursement calendar. Would you add anything to that, Deandra?
No, that looks good. That sounds good to me.
Okay. I thought we could pause if there are any questions around those pieces, Micah.
Yeah, so Jacqueline asked, what is the timeline for notification of award and project start dates?
Oh, that's a good question. I have a slide here. Oh, this actually doesn't go that far out. So, the project start date can be kind of flexible based on when all of the grant agreements and required materials are in place. So if that takes a couple of weeks to a month, it could depend, but ideally we would have the project start date pretty dialed in within maybe a month and a half after notifications and procurement started to do their work with you on the agreement process. For this particular grant, we are also offering, because of our own kind of capacity challenges, it's taken us a while to get this out. We were really hoping to get it out much earlier in the year. And so we are also allowing on a case-by-case basis for grants to be, I'm not sure, Deandra, would that be backdated so that the effective date and they could bill back to January 1st of 2022. So that is something that is also possible, because we know that a number of 4% LIHTC projects that were in the pipeline when we had hoped to get this out initially have since exited the pipeline. And so a lot of the work has already been done, and the community-based organizations who supported those development projects have already provided the work and kind of absorbed those costs. And so we want to make sure that they have a way to receive compensation for that work that was provided earlier in the year in support of some of those 4% pipeline projects. So that is a possibility there. And then notification I can provide a few more dates. I don't have my calendar, apologize, up. But it usually will take us about 4 weeks for the review panel to do their review and scoring, depending on how many applications we get. And then after that, it will take us a couple of weeks for the internal approvals process. And so we're looking at maybe, I think what I had on my calendar is a mid-March effective date that we would be hoping to meet at the very latest. Anything else, Micah?
Nope, that's it for right now.
Okay. Would you add anything to that, Deandra?
Other than like Kimmy said, just these are dates that we are definitely hoping to. These are our goal dates. Of course, in the world of procurement, we like to say that it depends, only because there's so many outside factors that can impact us meeting our timelines. But as far as of today, yes, I would agree with that those are the dates that we had originally discussed as being targeted for this project. And while we're on the slide, we can talk about the dates. Are you okay with that, Kimmy?
Oh yeah, go for it.
Okay. So I just wanted to bring your attention to the timeline of events here that we have. This timeline of events will also be found in the RFA. And it just kind of gives you a brief overview of some of the key dates as it relates to this particular offering, and just some dates to really, pay particular attention to. And so, although we are answering a few questions throughout this recorded webinar, there will be a question and answer period as well that you can submit your questions in writing to the procurement email inbox. And so all of those questions will be due December 12th at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So we do ask that if you have any questions following this webinar, please get those into us so that we can go ahead and get them answered. We do hope to have those questions, answers to those questions posted as an addendum to this RFA by December 19th. And then again, that hopefully will give you enough time to incorporate any changes to your RFA before the closing date of January 13th. And also any changes that may take place that will impact the RFA will also be posted to procurement's website as an addendum to the RFA. So please continue to visit that website for any changes, as that's the primary location that we will post any sort of updates or changes or revisions to any sort of documents as needed.
Thanks. Yeah, and the December 19th is kind of our deadline for getting those answers to questions posted. If we can get them all answered and posted sooner, we will absolutely. So, keep checking the procurement webpage for those. So next steps for you would be to regularly check the procurement opportunities page for any updates. Oh, I did want to say that initially when we posted the RFA and the attachments, everything was in order, and then suddenly somehow a bunch of extra attachments just popped up. And so they were only up for a very short amount of time before we were notified that there were these extra attachments there, and we pulled them off. But there should only be attachments A through
E, I believe.
E, right? A through E. And so just kind of a heads up, if you had already pulled stuff off in the last 24 hours, just make sure you go back on there and make sure that you only have attachments A through E. F through K were accidentally kind of tagged on by someone to our RFA, and they are off now, so it shouldn't be a problem, but just wanted to kind of call attention to that. So any questions that we don't get to today, send them to procurement. They'll loop me in, and then Deandra and I will do our best to answer them, and then include them in that follow-up kind of FAQ that will get posted. Complete and submit your application by the deadline, January 13th. We know that the holidays are just such a crummy time to post an offering, so we tried to kind of extend it beyond the holiday with a little bit extra time for the application window. And it's a good idea to give your legal and insurance advisors a heads up. You can start sharing the template grant agreement with them so they can find any things that they're going to want to bring up later in conversation with Deandra. And sometimes there are additional layers of insurance that we might be asking for, or differences in amounts that you'll want to kind of be aware of and be prepared, so that later on you can work through those conversations with Deandra and determine kind of next steps with those.
Team, yeah, we have one final question.
Okay, great.
So Kate asked, can you preview future funding opportunities for additional partnership grants or other funding direct to organizations?
So typically the GHAP capacity building funds have gone to and are intended to go to organizations that are directly doing development and ownership of affordable rental housing properties. It's really in the last couple of years that we have recognized a need to interpret capacity building to the broader ecosystem that supports successful development and sustained existence of affordable rental housing. So I am uncertain of the future of offerings from this particular fund for nonprofits generally, or around resident services generally. Although, you know, demand for this source of funding could absolutely inform decisions in the future. So that's kind of one piece. Separately, there are a number of other capacity building, GHAP capacity building offerings that are already in procurement's pipeline, and we're just working out the kinks on the RFAs. And those I'll be posting information about on the GHAP capacity building webpage soon. But there's a general GHAP capacity building grant for developer organizations or emerging developer organizations who have a board that has made clear decisions and actions to move the organization into the space of doing development and operating affordable rental housing long term. So there's a general grant that will be coming out to provide kind of support over the course of 3 years. And then we're also working on developing a housing, regional housing studies and research pool of funds that organizations and agencies can tap into to support housing studies for their community or region. So there are a number of things. We're also looking at ways that we can directly support through development projects by integrating capacity building funds into the NOFA process. So there are a bunch of different things that we're working on, as well as the possibility of expanding the training and technical assistance opportunities around permanent supportive housing through these funds as well. So lots of stuff cooking, and I will do my best to keep you all informed as those things actually start to become a reality. But this one is the first one that I put into the pipeline, and it is the first one coming out of the pipeline. I appreciate your patience to anyone who's on this call who has been a thought partner in this process, because it's taken us a little while with our own capacity issues to get this out the door, but I'm excited. This is good progress, good movement, and I'm really looking forward to working with all of you in some capacity in the future. Micah, is there anything else?
Nope, it looks like we are good on questions.
Okay, email any follow-up questions related to this grant to procurement. If you have follow-up questions related to just GHAT capacity building, more generally, you can contact me about those. I can't speak directly to this grant or provide you any direct support around applying for this grant, but I can absolutely speak about the GHAT capacity building program more broadly. I so appreciate your time and your patience with this process. And thank you for being here today and your interest in this offering. I can give you 3 minutes back, unless, Micah, there was any last somethings that popped in the chat.
Nope, we're good.
Okay, very good. I hope you all have a great day. This video will be posted online soon. Bye. Micah, can you stop the recording?
Yep, I'm doing it.